Welcome, everyone, to the Firing the Man podcast. On today's episode, we are joined by Paul Ross. Now, Ken, we just got done with this interview, and I don't think I have laughed this hard on any episode that we've done to date. What'd you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we're, 80, 90 episodes in, and Paul is a hoot, man. You are not going to want to miss this show. Paul's been on BBC, Fox, Huffington Post, Rolling Stone. I mean, he's an author, and he is just an all-around. I'm going to label Paul as an OG. Like, this guy's an OG. If anybody is, he's an OG. And one of the things he shares is how an e-commerce entrepreneur can increase their revenue by 30% or more in 90 days. I mean, incredible. You're not going to want to miss it. David, what stuck out to you?
Yeah, he broke down the sales process into, identifying certain words. And I'm not going to give away too much here in the intro, but that guy knows how to sell. So much so that he wrote the book, Subtle Words That Sell. And so this is a absolute dynamite podcast episode that you're not going to want to miss.
Yeah, and it's probably also not safe for work.
Yeah, if you're riding in the car, I would not recommend listening to this with your kiddos. Nonetheless, it is an awesome episode. So anyway, enjoy the episode. Welcome, everyone, to the Firing the Man podcast. On today's episode, we have the pleasure to interview Paul Ross. Paul is a master sales trainer, keynote speaker, author of Subtle Words That Sell. For the last 30 years, Paul has been speaking in front of tens of thousands of people, teaching them to use the power of language to persuade, sell, and even heal. Now he's trading in the stage for the USB mic, bringing his message to the podcasting community. Paul has been featured on BBC, Fox, CBS, Huffington Post, the Rolling Stones. First things first. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey.
Well, I need to correct something in that introduction. I'm still very much open to jumping on stages, so I've not traded that in.
Very good. Very good.
Well, questions like tell us a little bit more about yourself, call for narratives. I generally speaking don't do narratives, but a couple of interesting things. One of the things that you left out, I don't know, it's usually in there, is that I'm a master hypnotist. I've been doing hypnosis and subconscious persuasion for 33 years. And I got my start in it as a dating and seduction coach. I am actually the guy who started that whole worldwide pickup girls community, believe it or not, because I had problems with my own love life. I was not always, are we doing video too? Can they see the video?
Yeah, you bet.
I was not always this handsome specimen you see before you today, ladies and gentlemen. I was 6'2", 125 pounds, looked horrible, had tremendous amount of body shame, and just didn't have any emotional intelligence, couldn't talk to women. And I discovered NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. It helped me overcome my shame, my shyness, and taught me how to speak in ways that are very emotionally evocative. And if you stop and think about it, dating and selling are very similar. In fact, a date is the biggest sell of your life. You have to do your proper prospecting. You have to qualify the prospect, gain rapport, do your sales presentation, do some trial closes and overcome objections, and hopefully get repeat business. And even if you're really good like me, referrals.
Very nice. Very nice.
I'm also, I'm an avid reader and I'm a cat lover. I have 2 kitty cats who I've thrown out of the room so they don't dance on the keyboard.
So Paul, excellent introduction, and I'm excited for the show. I don't know what's going to happen on this show, but it's going to be fun. I know that. I've read somewhere that you were author of the book Subtle Words That Sell. Can you tell us about that book and what's it gonna teach? What does that book teach people? That looks awesome. I like that cover.
Well, the subhead says it all. How to get your prospects to convince themselves to buy and add top dollars to your bottom line. So I have a radically different, batshit crazy, topsy-turvy down the rabbit hole look at how selling really works. It's unlike anything you've ever seen before. To me, selling is about expanding consciousness. It's not about getting your ideas into your prospect's mind. It's about expanding their consciousness to include your ideas. So in that way, they convince themselves to buy not your product or service, because you're never selling your product or service. You're always selling decisions and good feelings about decisions. And those are made on the subconscious level. So by learning how to address the subconscious of your prospect and create states of them of focus, states of wanting to believe you, states of deep trust, any message you give will go through those filters and will be far more likely to be received in a positive light. So what I'm teaching is a completely different way. Yes, I give people the exact words to say in this book. That's true. There's some scripts in here you can use, particularly to crush objections, my favorite thing to teach. That's all true. But it's also true that there's a deeper understanding of how subtle selling works. I like to call it the subconscious sales advantage. And so the metaphor I like to use is you take a wizard or someone who's learning magic. The beginner reads from the book of spells. They don't understand what they're doing. They just read from the book. The master can write the spells, and then the absolute master doesn't need any spells at all. Just by their presence and their power, they can be persuasive. So really, we're talking about a fundamentally different way of looking at selling. And whether that's, and look, if you're an entrepreneur, I need to inform you, you're in the business of selling constantly. That's the only way you get revenue coming in.
I'd like to maybe do a little bit of role play in terms of selling. I really like your commentary on you're not selling your product or service, but you're going about it in a completely different way. Can you think, is there anything within arm's distance of you that we could do a little role playing here?
Well, you don't want what's in arm's distance of me.
We're off the guardrails. I love it.
Oh, I told you we go off the guardrails. I told you we just break the guardrails completely. Guardrails are no fun. I'm not sure what you're getting at. Can you like sell me this? Sell me this. I don't do those kind of stupid scenarios. But what I can give you is a few words that you can use at the beginning of any sales presentation to put your prospects in a very deeply suggestible, semi-hypnotic state, and to give them the impression on the underlying subconscious level that you are a trusted leader who they already view as someone they need to follow. I can do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's dive into that.
So a typical sales presentation is about something you do to someone. As I'm presenting this opportunity to you today, I would just like to ask you to please ask any questions that come up for you to help you see that this is something you want to do. Something along those lines. Maybe you make some jokes, tell some stories, etc. But I say there are certain words that I call implied relationship words that act like post-hypnotic suggestions, because I am a hypnotist, that will convince the subconscious mind of your listener or viewer to see you as an absolute expert and authority before you give them any facts, figures, or data. Here it goes. I would say something like, before we explore this opportunity together today, I'd just like to invite you to please share the questions that naturally arise when a great decision is being made. So let's look at those words, not before I, but before we. Did you hear it? So we implies we're on the same side of the table. Explore. In any exploration, there has to be a leader, and therefore there has to be a
follower.
Exactly. Before we explore this opportunity together. Again, it implies a relationship today. I just want to invite you. When you extend an invitation to someone, it implies a valuable gift is being given. To please share the questions, not ask the questions, but share the questions. What's the distinction between sharing and asking? Do we share things with people who we don't trust?
No.
So in the space of that one sentence, we're embedding suggestions without saying it directly. I'm not saying, well, Mr. Smith, as we go through this presentation, you're going to more and more view me as your leader, someone who you believe in, someone who you absolutely trust without question. If I said that directly, they'd give me the finger or kick me in the jimmy. What's the distinction? And let's pull one word out of that. So the words are we, explore, together, invite, and share. Let's take just one, the word share. What's the difference in saying, please share your questions and saying, please ask your questions? Asking is something that one person does to another. Sharing is something that one person does with another. It implies a relationship. Now, this is very subtle, hence the title of the book, Subtle Words That Sell. So that's just one example. And remember, for me, selling is about creating states of consciousness. My first question I ask myself is not, how do I want to present this plan so they understand the facts and figures or show that I sell 15%, whatever. My first question is, what states of mind do I want the client in? And how do I get them there? Do I want them in a state of boredom? Do I want them in a state of distraction? And believe me, folks, one of your number one barriers of selling you're not selling your product or service, but one of your number one barriers to successful sales is this thing, a smartphone, because of these things and the internet, people's attention spans have been drastically cut. So even if they're initially, and people are distracted and they're numbed out and they're dumbed down. One of my mentors said to me, Paul, if you can't make your proposition simple enough that my 4-year-old daughter, Madison, can get it, then you need to go back and rethink it.
I like that. That's so true. Like we day to day, we're like just going from one thing to the next, immediate, reactions and impulses. So Paul, David and I, and a lot of listeners, we sell on e-commerce platforms, Walmart and Amazon. And so you just mentioned, most of our customers, they use their smartphones for shopping. And so they go on and start browsing for products that they're looking for to solve a problem. And so do you have any tips on, like, if we're writing copy or on the listing of
oh boy,
product,
do I ever.
Yeah.
I've made millions of dollars writing copy. I've lost most of it, but I sure as hell made it. And I'm going to give you everything I'm about to teach you comes from out of the mouth and the words and the writing of my mentor, one of the great teachers of my life, Gary Halbert. I don't know if you've ever heard of Gary, but Gary had passed on in 2007. He was a Mozart of writing copy. Or more like a Barnum and P.T. Barnum, or both, the combination of the two. Gary said, no one has time to figure out your pathetic subtlety. That really stuck with me. And he also said, people will not stand to be bored. They just won't take it. So you need to write something that grabs their attention right away. Whether that's in a video or in an audio or in a print ad, you need to do it right away. Let me go back to my origins as an internet marketer. I started in 1994. I got the domain name, and people can be offended. I don't give a shit. I don't care at my age. I'm doing well enough where I don't need the business. So, y'all.
That's awesome.
My website is seduction.com. I got seduction.com in 1994. And I made my original 6 figures with a ad I wrote in the back of men's magazines. I'm just going to give you the headline for the ad. The headline said, "The amazing seduction secrets of a skinny, ugly, 6-foot geek from Culver City, California, that could get you all the hot, sexy women you ever desired, no matter what your looks, finances, or age, or it's free." Now you're saying that's a long headline, but no, who's not going to read that? Everyone's going to stop. Gary's exercise for us was go get all the rag magazines, the Inquirer, the Weekly World News, the Examiner, write out all of their headlines for a month, and you'll get pretty good at writing copy. You need to grab people's attention very quickly. People do not have time to figure out your pathetic subtlety.
What are some mistakes that you observe entrepreneurs making as it relates to maybe being overly subtle?
In copywriting, you mean?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that this would turn into a course on copywriting, but I'm happy to do it. One of the things that Gary teaches or taught, I still think of him as being alive in some ways. Gary taught that it has to pass the read out loud test. If you can't read the sentence out loud, then it's not a well-written sentence. So if I write something, it has to pass the talk test. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And what else did Gary say? Gary said, research your markets. Even more important than a good headline and a good story and an irresistible offer is research your market. He once said, I don't want to make this about Gary Halbert, but I'll give you one more story. Gary said in a seminar, let's do a contest. We're going to open up competing hamburger stands. I'll give you any advantage that you want over me. What would you like? And people would say fresher tasting meat. Some person said topless waitresses. Gary said, okay, you know what I want? A starving crowd. So who is your starving crowd, entrepreneurs?
Like our like very hyper-focused audience, perhaps.
Yeah, who are your starving crowd, and who do you not want to serve? For example, I know my starving crowd. They're not starving because I only work with people who are already really successful and they're highly motivated and they want to crush their best day and potentially crush their competition. So I know I'm not going to put out a message that says, hey, if you're struggling and you're really ready to begin finally succeeding, that's not what I do for the sales side of what I do. For the seduction side, yeah, I'll say, hey, I don't care if you've never had a woman in your life or blah, 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 you're living in your mom's basement. Come to me and I'll show you how to fix that problem. It's different.
Yeah, absolutely. So switching gears a little bit, Paul, you mentioned earlier, you've been an entrepreneur since 94.
It was 1990. I'll never forget the day. So I was selling copies of my original book. Man, you're gonna catch it. This is my original book.
How to Get the Women You Desire into Bed.
Yes, that's my original self-published piece of this is the most unbridled, uncensored interview I ever did. What the hell? My mentor said, just go for it. Tell people your story. It's interesting. The people are going to be offended. And Gary said that. Gary said, don't worry about offending the dogs. Just focus on attracting the foxes. So there you go. Let's offend people even more. No, I got into it. I wrote ads for my book, as I said, in the back of men's magazines. I got on some TV shows. And then I was working as a paralegal full time. There came a point where I realized I'm losing money going into work. Every time I go into work, I have to pass on a radio interview that makes me on average like $5,000–6,000. So I went in and said to my boss, Teresa, I work for a law firm. I was a paralegal for like 30 lawyers. And I said, I'm losing money when I come into work. I really got to go. And she said, well, you can go today. I said, no, you're the best boss I've ever had. I'll give you 2 weeks notice. I remember my last thing I ever did at work. I took an update for the law library and I threw it in the trash because they gave me too much work to do. I remember I left the underground garage. I drove to where I lived in Marina Del Rey and I threw my key card into the ocean. And that Sunday night, which I shouldn't have done, that's killing birds and seals, but sorry, seals, or sea lions. That Sunday night, I was driving home and there was tons of traffic. I thought, wow, all these people have to go to work tomorrow and I don't. And that was the moment that it really hit me. I had fired the man big time. That's
awesome. So bring us to that point. Like what did it mean to you? How did you feel? And how did the next few weeks and months go?
I feel I had worked jobs my entire life. Although I enjoyed being a paralegal, I was good at it. Didn't pay more than like $20 an hour, $15 an hour. So I thought, wow, there's a whole world waiting for me. It's like, do you remember the moment you moved out of your house and there was no parents to supervise you, no one to tell you you can't do something or what to do, and you were completely free? Remember that?
I do.
Yeah.
Although you look like you could still be living, Ken, in your mom's basement, but
I might be.
I'm just effing with you, my man. I like it.
All good.
So it was a wonderful feeling. And then I knew, don't get me wrong, I work a lot. There are times I don't work much as an entrepreneur. I tend to have a flood of work and then I finish it and I goof off for a day. And I have time to think, but I always know that what I'm producing is for me. Unfortunately, we're always working for the man because we got to pay taxes. So in a sense, we can't fire those people, even though I would like to do so, but you can't fire them.
I want to dive a little bit more into couple things. One, your T-shirt. Can we talk a little bit about that right now?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Defund the media.
Yeah. Let's dig into that.
I like to provoke people. My ex-girlfriend, who's about to have a baby, not mine, said, Paul, why do you like to provoke people? I'll wear T-shirts that say, the biggest virus is the media, or is fear, or I just like to provoke people. My mother, when I was a little kid, I was sassing her. Maybe I was 5 or 6 years old. She said, Paul, if you don't watch it, you'll grow up to be an iconoclast. I said, what's that? She said, an iconoclast goes around knocking over other people's sacred ideas and making them very angry. I said, Mommy, I want to be an iconoclast. How do I do that? So I like to annoy people. I like to be the gadfly. She said, you're a gadfly. I said, what's a gadfly? She said, the gadfly is the big fly that flies around the horse and constantly annoys it. So the horse has to swish its tail to chase the fly away. My mother impressed things upon my mind that have never gone away. Thanks, Mom.
Very nice.
So if you're out there watching this and you're offended by what I'm saying, blame my mom. No, who are you to blame my mother? You want to talk about my mama? You come over here. I got thunder and lightning for you.
Nice. And for those that are listening, he put up what I like to call Pete and repeat. That's left and right. So Paul, you mentioned something earlier on, like in your kind of your intro. You mentioned, and I've heard it a few times before. I'd like to dive into a little bit. I think it was NLP. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Kind of explain it.
NLP stands for Neuro Linguistic Programming. There's a lot of different definitions of NLP, but for me, it's the study of human excellence. It looks at how geniuses, people who are very talented, do what they do. It takes apart and it extracts and takes apart the structure of their talent and then repackages it so you can teach it to anybody. So for example, someone who's naturally good at, someone who's naturally good at making friends with anybody, they may not know how they do that. But with the skills and tools of NLP, you can unpack that talent. You can extract out that talent, look at the different levels. What does that person believe? What are their attitudes? What do they notice? What do they ignore? Et cetera, et cetera. And you can begin to teach that talent to other people.
Very nice. Would you have a good book recommendation for NLP starter pack?
Sure. Yes, absolutely. Well, if you want to apply it to sales, no, not that one. This one, Subtle Words That Sell. Get it on Amazon. Your best starter book.
So a lot of our audience are e-commerce entrepreneurs, and they're always looking for ways to increase revenue, increase sales. So
repeat business.
Repeat business. Okay.
The most expensive thing you can do is to acquire a customer. The next most expensive thing you can do is to lose a customer.
Okay.
Is that Teddy Roosevelt riding a moose behind you?
It sure is. It sure is.
That's Batman over there, and Joker and Harley Quinn over there. And over there, do you recognize that actor?
I don't. Who is that?
Tom Cruise.
Okay. Very nice.
Tom Cruise played a version of my Ross Jeffries character in the movie Magnolia. So Tom Cruise actually played me in a movie.
That's awesome. It's awesome.
This is all over the map.
It's good.
I told you.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
So
this Paul, is not a dry conversation.
Not at all.
Not at all. So Paul, we're going to pivot a little bit. This show is awesome, and I want to continue down this path. And so you've had an amazing journey. And can you share just one story? I love story time. Can you share a story with the audience that you've had on your journey that's been really impactful to you?
I'll tell you what's most impactful to me is when people, I'll give you a recent example. I worked with a guy, and I'm not industry specific necessarily, but I worked with someone who's I broke my rules. My rules are I only work with people already making good amounts of dough, because that's who I like working with. But this guy was a former student of my seduction stuff, and he wanted coaching with me, and he couldn't afford my normal fee. So I cut the fee dramatically. Don't even try that with me, because you have to apply. And when you apply, I'll see your revenue levels. So forget about it. But in his case, I did it. When he started working, his paycheck was $3,500, and he had to drive Lyft or Uber to put food on the table in addition to his check. By the time I was done with him, his biggest check was 27,000 something. And he just thanked me profusely for being able to provide for his family. And that was very touching to me. In fact, he did so well, he quit Loan Depot, who he was working for, and opened up his own shop. So bringing people that kind of thing where or I also like astonishing people, to take people and say, trust me, believe what I'm doing will get your sales up 30 to 40%. I know it sounds crazy, just trust me. And then to have them report back to me makes me feel so happy. I do have one of my VIP clients makes tons of cash. He is one of my ideal prospects and clients. I have a 10-minute panic call. In addition, I don't want to make it seem like I'm promoting myself, but among other things, to get a 10-minute panic call, which no one uses, he took his 10-minute panic call. He was about to lose a $4.5 million deal. He's a real estate syndicator. And I gave him 7 sentences to say. And he texted me back like 2 hours later saying, I got the deal on my terms. So I saved this guy, he was going to lose about $400,000 in fees and commissions, etc. So that made me feel pretty good. And then I have many of them, I have to say, from the seduction side, there's that book out of print. From the seduction side, I've had students tell me they were ready to kill themselves. They were ready to drink bleach. One of them told me he was looking at his balcony, calculating how hard he was going to hit when he stepped off on the 5th floor, because he hadn't had a girlfriend in his entire life and he was in his 30s. And then when they tell me that I saved their life, and they really mean it, and they break out weeping, that's a tremendous responsibility. It's very, very humbling. It's deeply humbling to save a life. And to know, I've had people send me pictures of their family, their wife, their kids, saying, thank you. I would not have my children if it weren't for you. That's humbling. That's really effing humbling, to know that there are children in the world because your work saved someone's life and changed how they relate to people they're attracted to. That's pretty humbling stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Man, this has been a good conversation. Ken, anything else you want to get into before we get into the fire round?
We can get into UFOs, which I've seen.
Oh, we got to explore this one. We really
have. I really have. In fact, that's one of my favorite books, because I know you asked to recommend a favorite book. I'm going to recommend one. No, I've seen him when I was a little kid. No one's going to want to contact me after this. He's a sexist. He teaches seduction. He's a hypnotist. Steer clear of this weirdo, and you're going to get hate mail. But I'm going to take your hate mail. I'm going to give out an email address only for people who hate me. I'm just kidding. You can email me if you'd like me to. No, I just saw a giant one float over our backyard when I was a kid. Made no noise, changed color, changed shapes. I could not make any sense out of what it was. It wasn't a blimp, wasn't an airplane. I don't know. It's scary. All I know is the most terrifying thing I've ever seen in my life. It absolutely different kind of terror. It was, there's a difference between, if I said there's a tiger, I'm about to let it in the room, you'd be terrified. But if I said a ghost is about to walk through the wall and you believed me, that's the kind of terror that makes your hair stand up on end. That was the kind of terror it was. It absolutely terrified me because it didn't fit into any category of anything I'd ever seen before.
That's pretty incredible. Yeah. It makes you think, right? Like, that's a deep story. I have not seen any UFOs yet. Not saying that they're not out there, but
I've dated a few aliens.
I think I have done it. I have done that same thing as well. I have, before we get into the fire round, I have one more question.
Sure.
So, Paul, can you share a few tips on how our audience on this podcast are largely e-commerce entrepreneurs? Can you share a couple of tips that they can use to increase their revenue by 30% or more in 90 days?
Yeah, first and foremost, learn to get people's attention immediately by writing a gripping headline. Know your market. Who really is your market? Not who you think is your market, but who really is your market for what you have. Always bear in mind you're never selling your product or service at every moment in your connection with that prospect. You're selling decisions or good feelings about decisions. Even if it's a decision to continue reading your ad, that's a decision. So you better make sure that you're continuing to guide them to the decisions that lead to the final decision, which is to buy.
Okay, no, those are great nuggets. Very cool. Awesome. So, okay, so now we're moving into the fire round. Are you ready, Paul?
Hit me with your best shot, fire away.
What is your favorite book?
Tied. So fiction or nonfiction or both? Which do you want to know?
Both.
Let's do both.
Fiction would be a science fiction novel by Philip K. Dick called Valis, V-A-L-I-S. And Philip K. Dick, by the way, wrote stories that Hollywood later produced movies from, like Blade Runner and Total Recall, et cetera, all based on his work. And nonfiction, that's a toss-up between The Age of Reason by Thomas Paine, which totally destroyed my faith in the Bible. If you're a believer, that's great. I have no bone to pick with you, no quarrel. But I was a deeply believing Jewish person, and now I'm a agnostic / atheist. Thanks to that book. That book tore it to pieces for me.
Sounds like a powerful book. What are your hobbies, Paul?
Cats. I'm a cat lover. I have 2 of them. I'm a big cat fancier. I am an incredible dancer. I tend to attract women like bees to honey when I dance. I'm an outrageous flirt. I love to flirt. And those are the hobbies we can talk about without me getting arrested and your show shut down for aiding and abetting across state lines.
I love it. All right, we're going to say what's in the rails, and we're going to go to the next question. What is the one thing that you do not miss about working for the man?
Oh my God, punching a clock.
Yes,
and following orders. I do not do well with following orders. Unless I'm wearing my special outfit. Then I'll follow orders.
Awesome. Last
This
question.
is totally off the rails. I warned you, if you don't want to use this episode, you can toilet trash it.
No,
not at all. This is gold.
Last one. Yeah, this is gold mine. What do you think sets apart successful e-commerce entrepreneurs from those who give up, fail, or never get started?
First of all, you have to have a passion for it, and you have to have a vision of where you want to go. But equally true, you have to really get, at the end of the day, there's nothing else you know how to do. I can't do anything else. It's been 91, so that's what, 30 years. I have a 30-year unemployment record. I can't get a job flipping burgers, right? So at the end of the day, you really have to know. You burn. I love this. To the back of your, right there in back of you, Ken. You have to burn the boat. Yeah. You have to realize the boats have not only been burned, they're gone at the bottom of the ocean.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally agree. David, do you want to close out the show?
How can people get a hold of you, Paul?
Well, like I said, I really do only work with people who are already at least doing multiple 6 figures. Speaking to them, time is money. My time is my money. Your time is your money. I'm not going to waste your time. I wouldn't want you to waste mine. So if what I've said has been resonating with you in any way, along with making you laugh and maybe even offend you a bit, just contact me immediately. And the best way to do that is my email, paul@speakerpaulross.com. That's paul@speakerpaulross.com. And if you want to send hate mail, send it to ken@thefiringmanpodcast.org.
Love it. It's been a blast, Paul. Appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your time with the audience.
Well, good. Can you guys admit this has been the most off the rail episode you've ever done?
Yes. In 80 some episodes, this has been, I don't think I've laughed as hard, and this has been absolutely
And remember,
wonderful.
if you're a desperate geek who has not seen a woman naked without a credit card, pick up How to Get the Women You Desire into Bed somewhere. It's out of print, but I think you'd get it somewhere on Amazon.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, I know a couple people in my Rolodex. I'll be recommending that too. So
Nice.
www.seduction.com.
Very cool.
Awesome. Well, Paul, thank you so much for being on the show, and hope to talk to you soon.
Okay, if I'm still alive after this interview.